Hello and welcome back. Ed Brodasovich, George Stoya here from the SoonerScoop.com studios on Campus Corner, rolling into another game day, I think. Good conversation with Wes Mitchell from Gamecock Central, getting a better idea about Shane Beamer's team. But I don't know. This number keeps coming down. Oklahoma now a 1.5-point favorite at the moment of this taping. Going into Saturday morning, kind of weird. I guess first 11 a.m.-ish. Kickoff of the season, have the 2:30 against Tulane, but here we are. Oklahoma, a much-needed improvement from what was last week at the Cotton Bowl. George got the availability report on Wednesday. Not really a whole lot of surprises. I guess Sam Franklin, he was injured on a kickoff return. Too. David Stone listed as probable, but I guess we'll just kind of wait and see what happens with Deion Burks. Probably going to be, as Brent Venables said on Tuesday, defy all odds to get back onto the field this week, but maybe possibly at some point in the coming weeks.
It seems like he's getting closer.
Sure.
So I guess that's a positive.
Maybe he's up to 90% max volume.
Yeah, and I think if you get to 90, then maybe give it a go in warm-ups and see how you feel.
Sure.
But again, I don't really know what that means, but I wasn't surprised to see him on there as questionable. Again, Sam Franklin was added to it, Cade McIntyre, which I actually think Cade McIntyre would be kind of a boost for this Oklahoma team. I think they could use him at tight end right now.
Somebody's going to need to block the two big boys, number 5, exactly. Kevin Willard and God, I can't remember Kennard. I don't know why I keep doing that. I knew Dylan Stewart. I think a lot of people are going to know number 6 Dylan Stewart by the end of the day on Saturday. But yeah, it's obviously not a good situation on the injury front. The guys that are out are kind of the known quantities. Obviously, Andrell Anthony, Kendall Dolby, Garen Hatchett, Ginger Williams, Jalil Farouk, Jaden Gibson, and Nick Anderson all listed as out. But the good news is there hasn't been an added name to the outside of that list.
David Stone, but not for the out.
Right. And he was new to the list, but probable, not even really
the thing with
sure.
The injury report, it's funny because I tweet it out every time it comes out, and everybody's like, oh, this is the worst.
This sucks.
It keeps getting worse. It's like, what? There was nothing new on this report, that you shouldn't have been expecting. So, again, we'll see with Deion Burks. I personally don't expect him to play, but you never know. Maybe
maybe we'll be surprised on Saturday.
What was the guy in the Karate Kid that does the
wax on, wax off?
Yeah, but what's his name? Mr. Miyagi.
Mr.
Miyagi, and he does the thing to Daniel's leg. Maybe they could do that to Deion Burks.
I'd be more into magic, but that's me. Maybe just me. Maybe get David Blaine in there, and he'd just have a new leg by the end of the day.
That'd be awesome.
He could probably do that. Yeah, I agree with you, Kerry. Mr. Miyagi probably would be under some type of restraining order nowadays. But, hey, it is what it is. Shane Beamer bringing his group to Norman this weekend. Obviously, a lot of talk when you're talking about this Gamecock unit of the defensive side of the football. Very, very similar, and you'll hear our conversation with Wes Mitchell, but very similar in terms of the offense and struggling with I think they've probably had more highs than Oklahoma has had, but certainly a number of lows, leading the country in fumbles lost. One of the top teams, or I guess the bottom teams when it's talking about taking care of the football. You look at both of the defenses when you're talking about Oklahoma and South Carolina.
Yeah, it for sure starts with defense. I think the team that can create more turnovers in this game, and that you can say that every week, but especially this week when you have these two, stagnant offenses where, South Carolina's moved the ball a few times, but they turn it over in really key spots. Got a lot of young guys playing for them, especially, obviously, Sellers at quarterback has made some big mistakes. So if you're Oklahoma, you look at this matchup on the defensive side of the football and you say, okay, if you can stop their run game, force South Carolina to push the ball down the field, which I know Oklahoma's secondary has been suspect at times, but I do think that the South Carolina passing attack is not one. It's certainly not like what they saw against Tennessee, Auburn, or Texas. I think Oklahoma defensively can have some success. I think they can get after Sellers in the pocket with their pass rush, and then it's about slowing down Rocket Sanders, who's kind of been their big playmaker at running back.
No doubt, a name that I know Oklahoma fans may be familiar with if you live over on the east side of the state, starring at Arkansas and now making home in Columbia. But it was the South Carolina defense that Brent Venables talked quite a bit about on Tuesday at his weekly press conference, and here is the head ball coach.
Going into the year, I think, I said that at some point in time that I felt they were one of the more undervalued teams, looking at the teams that were on our schedule based on what they had coming back, what they had recruited. where they were as a football team coming out of the spring, and then I know they had a rough start in their opener against ODU, but other than that, man, they've played really well. They went on a year ago. They weren't great on the road, in 2 games this year at both Kentucky and at University of Alabama. They gave themselves a chance to win. They got after Kentucky really good. Played a good Kentucky team, a Kentucky team that beat Ole Miss 2 weeks ago, and also took Georgia all the way to the wire. Should have won that game, 1-point game against the University of Georgia. And I know Kentucky feels going into this year they have a really good team. So Shane's done a really good job. Their staff, they've done a really good job. They've recruited at a very high level, having gone against them in South Carolina, other coaches, and Shane as well. That's a place that's always been able to recruit well. The Carolinas is a fantastic part of the country where the kids don't usually go a long way away from home. They've got a lot to offer, both in the people that are there in Columbia, and certainly they've got fantastic facilities, great fan base, a very passionate fan base. They're going to show up every week, and they've done a nice job. They've got 37 seniors, which is the second most in all of college football. They've got, I think they have 6 sixth-year players on their defense, 6 sixth-year guys, and several of them are just the backups. And but they've got great experience. That's the best defense that I've seen them have since I've followed them closely. So for well over a decade, they're really good. They're fast, they're long, they're explosive, they're disruptive, and they're deep. And so they're playing at a really high level defensively.
Kind of unique, obviously, in that, he obviously coached against South Carolina for so many years there in the Palmetto State over at Clemson, but very familiar when you're talking about a South Carolina defense, obviously, and they're very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, you look at their front seven, they're playing as well as anybody in the country at times, and especially that pass rush. That's where it starts. You mentioned the 2 guys earlier. They're going to give Oklahoma some problems, and so I'm interested to see with an offensive line that's really been struggling this year.
Not exactly the most
not a great
comfortable matchup when you're looking at an offense that needs to find its way.
No, and that's why it's going to be interesting to see who do they roll out there at left tackle.
Sure.
Obviously, they benched Michael Tarquin, during the last game. I wonder if it's Jacob Sexton that's going to be out there. Jake Taylor at right tackle. If they mix it up, Heath Ozida left guard. So they're going to have to do some different things, some different protections. You wonder if they, have some 7 or 8 man, protections, where you're having a running back help chip one of those guys or a tight end help chip one of those guys, because one-on-one, those guys are as good as anybody in the country. So that's where Oklahoma has to be really good, because I do think on the back end, Oklahoma can find some big plays in the passing game, which has been very, very difficult for Oklahoma this year. But I do think
that would be something new.
That is somewhere for the South Carolina defense that has shown some issues. They've given up some big pass plays. If Oklahoma can give Michael Hawkins or if Jackson Arnold gets in the game, whoever's back there some time, I do think Oklahoma can maybe find some success pushing the ball down the field if they actually push the ball down the field.
No doubt. We'll have more on Michael Hawkins here in a second. It is all about the bounce back, and especially coming up with the loss at the Cotton Bowl. Coming back home, it's not a situation Oklahoma finds itself in too often, coming off of a loss. The last time that they were on the field in Norman, they've lost 1 time, back-to-back or consecutive home games since 1999. Obviously, that coming in 2014, as we covered on Tuesday. But bouncing back, that's been kind of the word with some of the Oklahoma players, talking to them about just kind of getting things right, as well as finding some way, somehow, to be able to move the football.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that happened. Now all you can do is learn from it. That's a dead yesterday. We can't change that past. We can't change the outcome of that. We just have to learn from the mistakes that we made, see what we did wrong, and just go back to the drawing board and correct it.
How was practice today?
I think it was really good. Obviously, there's a lot of emphasis on our effort and physicality. I think for a Monday we did the best we could.
Defensively, we got to get better. Putting 34 points on the scoreboard, it's unacceptable. And we know what we got to do better. Just getting back to work, getting in the field room, and just watching film and getting next to the next week getting ready for South Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, everyone just has to be focused on doing their 111. You know, everyone just has to do their job. That's the main part. Nobody has to go out there and, you know, be Superman and try to make that type of play. You know, we all play in the defense and play our role. The plays are going to come to you, and you know what I mean. We're going to have a great game if we execute like that.
You know, it's just things. It's just little things here and there. It's the same thing in every position group all over the country. I mean, no one's going to play perfect, obviously, but I mean, I think for us, we just got to make sure that we focus on doing the little things and just doing our job.
I mean, just not letting it be too big on my mind. Like, I mean, obviously, we want to be undefeated. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, we put a lot of work in since spring and just been working our tail off, and just so much we put into this game and put into Oklahoma. You know, but at the end of the day, it's us. It ends with us, and I've been saying this since the beginning. It starts with the details, and it's always the details with everything. So just keep trying to work on that is the number one thing.
Certainly a trying time right now for Oklahoma offensively. You look at the numbers, you see a lot of triple digits. Number 123rd in the country in pass yards per game, 125th in total offense, 122nd in sacks allowed, 130th in third down defense. That was, as it was noted on Thursday on Twitter by the great Dan Lindblade out of Tulsa TV. Tulsa's scored more touchdowns than Oklahoma this season, and that's a Hurricane program that's a 3-point underdog to Temple. Remember them on Saturday?
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's not good.
I might take the Golden Hurricane money line on that.
You can do that. You're a Tulsa guy. You're a Tulsa native.
I like Kevin Wilson.
We like you want to come back calling offense? Call us,
what
Kevin.
the hell?
It's trying times, obviously. Where do you go? Where do you go from here? I mean, I think that we've sat here for the last 6 weeks trying to figure out, okay, maybe if they do this, then maybe you can find something. Maybe you instill Michael Hawkins and give him a spark. And it did for a second. Everything felt good out of the Auburn game. And then obviously the disaster that was the Cotton Bowl.
Well, there's only up, Eddie. I said on
keep saying that, 40, and it keeps going the other way.
I don't think it can get worse. You know, you never. I guess it could.
Sure.
But I do think that they have to just find, you know, what's their bread and butter? What is this offense's identity? You know, you've said it best this week. Just find 5 plays that you really like. Just run them over and over again.
5 plays, that's it.
You know, whether it's simple GT counter
but be really good at it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, obviously executed at a high level, but you know, it just seems like things are too complicated right now, and I think guys are confused. You know, you heard Brent say it earlier this week, but everyone seems to be playing a little bit too fast. The game's going too fast for you. So finding a way to slow it down, whether that's doing, you know, we've talked a lot about it, doing less tempo, right? You know, huddling, you know, making sure every single person knows exactly what their job is on every single play. I think that's the way forward. I just don't know if that's something they're going to do. I mean, the identity is supposed to be go fast, big plays, push it down the field, you know, run zone insert, zone slice, whatever you want to call it, on offense in the running game. But I think that it's pretty clear they need to, you know, one, pick a quarterback. It sounds like it's going to be Michael Hawkins. It is going to be Michael Hawkins on Saturday. But moving forward, continue to either go with Michael or go with someone else. Find your 5 on the offensive line. I think start playing some of those younger guys. Get a Troy Everett in there. I think he's going to play this Saturday quite a bit. And then just try to find something offensively that you can hang your hat on, because right now they have nothing. Yeah. And I don't know what that is, Eddie. I wish I had the answer. I think if Oklahoma had the answer, they'd probably be playing a lot better too offensively right now. But if you can find any sort of success this week, maybe moving forward, you can kind of just continue to lean on whatever that is.
No doubt. A lot of positivity from the defensive side of the ball, and encouraging their teammates to stay positive through the process. Here is a little bit of a notebook from some of the players, Grayson Halton, Danny Stutzman, and then a number of other guys on the offensive side of the ball just looking for answers right now.
Is it hard to just be positive with the offensive guys right now, just in terms of what they're going through as a unit?
I mean, you know, if you believe like a guy like me, you know, positivity, you know, that's always going to be around. You know, we can't focus on the negativity. You know, it's going to dwell on you. It's going to hurt you if you focus on negativity, especially stuff that goes on social media. So we can't focus on that. You just got to focus on positivity.
There was never one time in August where we were kind of like, oh, you know, this could be rough. I mean, no one's going to think like that. I mean, obviously, you're in camp. You can go to every single camp in America. There's going to be mess-ups there and there. But we go out there, we do what we're coached to do, and If you mess up, you mess up. We got redos. You go back out there and we get it corrected. And that's what we got film for in camp. Everyone's going to mess up in camp. Camp's like, for me, what I've always learned in camp, that's where you try new things. Like for me, I try new technique in camp, see what works, see what doesn't, and then it's trial and error. So you go from there.
Just like I told Zion Reagans yesterday, I was getting treatment. He was up here too, and I kind of just told him I'm not trying to be a motivational speaker. I'm just trying to be a real person to you and trying to be a big brother. And I mean, it starts in practice. Sometimes we mess up and we kind of brush it off, but it starts right there. We got to have that in practice, and it's always the little details, like I've been saying. And you just got to have that mindset where you're going to mess up. I mean, nobody's perfect in football. Nobody's perfect in life, period. But you just got to, it's the way you're going to bounce back. And you got to ignore the outside. Just make sure you stay off all the social media, stay off that, because none of that matters. This right here, us, OU matters. So just make sure he knows that and print that in his mind. And, he just sat there and listened. And even the day after practice, he just came up to me and said, I appreciate you for so much for doing that, because I really needed that. So just making sure I go to my young guys and I just keep them up and uplifted, and just make sure they can keep going. We got a long season.
I mean, it depends on who you're looking at. If you got an older guy, it's water off a duck's back, you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. People are going to hate. Heck, we could go out there and score 70, and you're still going to have people that want people, they want people changes, they want this, they want that. It is what it is. You're never going to make everybody happy. So you just got to, all that matters is what's in that locker room for us.
It's the little details that he's been talking about the whole season. Since fall camp, it's been the little details, and I've been saying it a lot too, because it's what he printed in our head, and always tell us to go out there and make sure we're working on the little stuff and even the big ones. Just that, and making sure that we stay together as a team. I mean, it gets hard in moments like this. Obviously, after a loss, a lot of people get their head down, and this was a huge game. It was against the number one team and our rival, so a lot of people, are upset about it. And he's just making sure we just keep our heads on our shoulders and just keep going, and just stay together as a team and as a brotherhood, and make sure the leaders step up and keep speaking. So that's a good job.
It was good to talk to Troy Everett. I don't know if anybody would be displeased with them putting up 70. I know that Royce Young, the great Royce Young from Oklahoma City Thunder, has said that he will jump into Lake Hefner naked if Oklahoma were to score 56 points. So I don't know. Maybe.
What about you? Would you do that?
I've done it before. So
it'd be great on the
first
Scoop
time.
YouTube channel.
I don't know if we could put that up there, but
that's why we need an OnlyFans.
And as the great Uncle Frank said, if you see me naked, you'll never feel like an older gentleman. You'll never feel like a grown adult. So here we go. It is going to be trying times. Obviously, we'll have a little bit more with Michael Hawkins. It was good to catch up with Wes Mitchell. But first, before we hear from Wes Mitchell from Gamecock Central, let us tell you about Prize Picks. All you got to do is go download Prize Picks or go to the website, prizepicks.com, put $5 in. You get $50 off instantly using the promo code SoonerScoop. And I know that, George, you've been handing out winners weekly.
Not last week.
We took a hiatus from winning, but where are we going this week?
So last week I had too much confidence in
That's right.
Oklahoma's offense. I think.
Well, it wasn't too much confidence as much as you thought it was going to be competent.
Yes, and I thought Michael Hawkins might be able to escape a few times for some rushing yards. But this week I'm going with a former Oklahoma quarterback, Dylan Gabriel.
Okay.
Over 295
on Friday night, headed to West Lafayette.
Purdue's defense is not good. I like him over his passing total. And then I also am taking another Friday night game, Oklahoma State.
Okay.
New quarterback there.
Garrett Rangel named the starter for the Cowboys.
I'm taking Rashad Owens over 24.5 passing yards or receiving yards.
It's going to be interesting. The weather up in Provo on Friday night does not sound good.
No, but I like Rashad Owens. You know, maybe he's a big receiver, big target, and I think the new quarterback maybe opens up the offense a little bit for Oklahoma State.
The offensive situations in Stillwater and Norman have been very trying. I think it's putting it lightly, as both starters have now been benched. Alan Bowman going to the bench as they make their way up to Provo. All you got to do, though, is Prize Picks. I'm going to go Tank Dell over 59.5 for Houston on Sunday, headed up to Lambeau Field to take on the Packers. And then Tyler Lockett over 47.5 yards receiving
Tulsa
on
native.
Sunday. A Tulsa native.
Love
Seattle headed out to take on Atlanta, the Falcons. So all you got to do, $5, get $50 instantly using the promo code SoonerScoop on Prize Picks. Download the app. Very simple to use, as well as going to prizepicks.com. So without further ado, we will now go to our conversation with Wes Mitchell to learn a little bit more about the Gamecocks on Saturday. Now we welcome in Wes Mitchell from Gamecock Central, talking South Carolina, and it's really kind of interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of, similarities between these two teams offensively who are struggling. I think you look at South Carolina's record, 3-3, obviously coming in 1-3 in the SEC West, and it seems like this is a really damn good football team, just been on the wrong end of a couple decisions.
Yeah, they've played some really good games, guys. They've been in the lead going into the fourth quarter in two major games against top 20 opponents. They obviously had the game against Ole Miss where they just did not play well and kind of just got behind early, and momentum went completely against them. But you look at the other two games they lost, LSU, that's a game where they were at home and took a big early lead, and LSU just kind of chipped away. And a great football game. I mean, the game had everything you could possibly imagine, all crammed into four quarters, and came down to a late field goal where South Carolina was attempting for the tie. And then, like you said, Bama game last week, Carolina got behind in that one, battled back, took a second half lead, and just couldn't quite make enough plays. It's been a team that honestly has been in position, but has had too many key mistakes, whether that's turnovers, penalties, stuff like that have just been those differentiators between winning and losing.
Wes, I know when we talked to you back in the summer, kind of previewing this season, we kind of asked you about Shane's future at South Carolina, if he was on the hot seat, if he wasn't, the feeling there. 6 games into this season, what's the feeling around Shane Beamer and the staff? I know here in Norman, there's been a lot of questions about possible staff changes, whether it's during the season or after the season or whatever it looks like, Brent Venables' future, all of that. How's it going for our guy Shane Beamer there in South Carolina?
Yeah, I think Shane himself, as far as like his actual current status, is in a good place when you're talking about administration. Now, the fans have started to chirp a little bit. A lot of the early, I would say, fire from the fan base has been more along the lines of offensive coordinator, play calling, those type of things. Now, I would say after the Ole Miss game, so you kind of look at it, like I mentioned, Carolina played well against LSU, well against Alabama. They played great against Kentucky. They didn't play well in their opener against ODU and still won the game, and they didn't play well against Ole Miss. So I would say after that Ole Miss game was probably the most just sort of negativity we have heard overall from the fan base, probably since Beamer has been here. So I do think they did sort of, because we're sitting there going and the fans are going, all right, what's the real South Carolina? Like, are they the team that has played really well in most of their games, or are they the team that struggled off the bat against ODU and then really just did not play well at home against Ole Miss? So I think right now fans are a little bit – I mean, y'all know how, like, just week to week this thing is, the ups and downs, the roller coaster. But yeah, I think Beamer, as far as his job status with the people that matter right now, he's still in a good spot, I think.
Rooting for Shane. Obviously, it sounds like turnovers been a big deal offensively. Lenora Sellers, you obviously turn on the Alabama tape. There's some really good, and then there's obviously some head-scratching moments for the redshirt freshman. Has it just kind of been the peaks and valleys of what you're going to see with a young quarterback, and just kind of just in general with the Gamecock offense? What have we seen here through the first half of the season?
Yeah, and we could have a whole podcast on that, I think, and a whole episode.
Sounds familiar.
And Lenoris, I mean, y'all will see on Saturday, like, he is a super talented kid, and he has had some great moments. And I do think they have their quarterback. Like, he is, I believe, the future of this program in terms of that position. But it's just been, this is his first year starting. And on top of that, he missed pretty much the whole second half against LSU. He was in and out early against Kentucky because of an injury. And then he missed all the Akron game, which I think probably would have been his opportunity to go out there and just kind of throw the ball around a little bit, open it up, get those just valuable reps. And so he missed that game with an ankle injury. So it not only is he in his first year as a starter, but it's just been disjointed in terms of getting consistent playing time. They've got all new wide receivers, all new running backs. And I don't know if you call it a young offense because there's transfers throughout all those positions. But when you look at that key position, when you look at quarterback, they are obviously young, inexperienced there. And Sellers, I mean, he's made some just wow plays this year where you can really see the talent, see the ability. Offensive line has still been something that's been work in progress. At times, it's kind of gelled and looked pretty good, especially in the running game. They have Rocket Sanders at running back, who is I would say when he has room, can be an elite back. And so it's just really been up and down for this offense. I would say they were at their low point against Ole Miss. First half against LSU before Sellers goes down, I mean, they were humming, like they were going up and down the field on those guys. And then Sellers literally got hurt on like the last drive of the half and missed the entire second half. So, yeah, I think there have been signs of progress for this offense, but it definitely has been up and down. And a lot of that has just been because you do have a young quarterback who has held on to the ball too long at times, has been under pressure a lot. And really, it's been the fumbles. It hasn't been necessarily throwing the football into danger too much. It's been more just, hey, you have to protect the football in terms of if you know you're going to get hit, kind of just knowing. One thing they talked about today, Dow Longs, the offense coordinator, spoke, and it's just sort of knowing when a play is over has been the big thing for Lenore. It's like he's so good at escaping pressure sometimes. It's difficult, but I'm watching Monday Night Football and watching Josh Allen, who's been in the league forever now and is an absolute freak show stud, and they're having the same conversations about him. So I think it's just figuring out a better way to walk that very fine line between when to give up on a play and when not.
Wes, tell us about some of these weapons around him. You mentioned one of them, Rocket Sanders. He's having obviously a really good career, at South Carolina, a good year at South Carolina, but he's had a great career going back to his time at Arkansas. Who are some of the other guys that Oklahoma fans should know coming into this game on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, it's a good question because they don't have like that, just other than Rocket, that known name at the other skill position spots. Now, they do have some guys who I think quietly have started to put together pretty good seasons this year. I'll start with Joshua Simon, number 6, the tight end. He's kind of that gutsy, just will do anything you need, can block, can catch the football. They use him a lot. And something you see teams use a ton of, I think, just like that RPO stuff where you sort of just shoot him out across the formation into the flat, get him the ball in these little sort of quick, easy passes and let him run for 2, 3, 4, 5 yards and just start a sequence of downs on first down with that sort of RPO look is something we've seen them do a lot of. Mazio Bennett at wide receiver is an emerging guy. He's their leading receiver as a true freshman. He was an early entry 4-star kid who just is – really, I think developed for a high school guy. Like he was one of these kids who had the personal wide receiver trainer in high school. Like just the route running is already sort of a good step ahead what you're used to seeing from true freshmen. So Mazio's been really good. He's kind of emerged. I would say he's a slot guy, but has emerged as maybe their top receiver. Of course, everybody around here wants to talk about Nick Harbor. It's been a process for Nick because he did not play wide receiver in high school. So that's been kind of an up and down process for him in terms of just consistently catching the football and naturally catching the football. He's had a good couple of weeks, though, so maybe he's emerging a little bit. Vendravius Jacobs, number 19, he's another guy to keep an eye on at receiver. And they actually have been without who I thought was probably their top emerging receiver, Jared Brown. He was a transfer, came in from Coastal Carolina, had a really good career there, and was brought in to be maybe a 1 or a 2 on this team, but has been dealing with a lower body injury. So that'll be something to keep an eye on as this week goes along, as they start putting out those availability reports. Is Jared Brown available for South Carolina at receiver? He's number 14 for your fans that like to sort of look at the personnel and stuff like that.
Other side of the ball, talking about one of the better defenses, especially up front, obviously Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart. They're two guys that I think a lot of people would know if you're familiar with the recruiting game. Dylan Stewart obviously is a known quantity. Debo Williams seems like he's having a pretty good year. When you talk about Oklahoma, it seems like a lot of pressure is being put on Oklahoma's defense. Same could be said for South Carolina and what they're doing defensively. You kind of rely on them to keep South Carolina in games.
Yeah, they've been fantastic, guys, and it does all start up front. We knew, obviously, with Dylan Stewart, he was, depending on where you look, like number 1, number 2 edge prospect in the country last year, and has come in and really just been a force there off the edge. But they bring in Kyle Kennard, transfer from Georgia Tech, and we knew that he was probably going to come in and start. Like we knew there was kind of a need there, and I figured he would play well. But he has been I mean, I saw a latest mock draft had him as a first rounder, and he honestly has been that good. Like, it has been consistent. He sets the edge against the run as well, so he's not a guy who's just firing off the edge every time. Although they are pretty aggressive on defense in terms of just letting those guys up front feel comfortable. Just going and making plays. They're very aggressive. Their defensive, like interior defensive linemen, their defensive tackles, T.J. Sanders, Boogie Huntley, Taka Hemingway. I think they've been overshadowed a bit by the edge guys, but they're really good as well. You mentioned linebacker. They got a couple other guys at linebacker. Debo Williams is sort of like the all-SEC returner, the guy people maybe know of, but Demetrius Knight, 17, he's come in. He's a big, fast, physical kid. He's a senior that's really come in and had a good year. Bam Martin Scott, 22, has been good. So they primarily they play that 4-2-5, so they play two backers at once. They primarily like rotate those three guys through the two spots. And the secondary too, man, like I think the secondary got a bad rep last year because of the lack of pressure up front. Like, they really just have completely flipped their D-line room. And so that's helped the secondary play a lot better. Nick Emmanwori has been a 2-year starter for them. He's really good. Jalen Kilgore, he's really good. Nick, a 3-year starter, actually. Jalen, 2-year starter. So it's kind of one of those things. I'm sure y'all deal with it too, the ups and downs of like fan perception. Like, this time last year, fans are ready to run Clayton White, the defensive coordinator, out of town. Like, just it got to that like toxic point where you're just like, man, this is not good between the fan base and sort of the program. And now South Carolina has the best defense they've put on the field in, a decade. Like, it's been that stark of a difference.
It's crazy because I know Brent Venables said yesterday he's obviously faced South Carolina a ton. This is the best defense he's seen at South Carolina during his time coaching against him, and he also talked a lot about the experience. Wes, I want to ask you, though, about the special teams, because when we talk about a game that could be a defensive battle, every point is going to matter. What can Oklahoma expect from the special teams? I know they missed a long field goal late in that Alabama game.
But they had the drop kick,
yes,
which was
amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about South Carolina special teams.
Yeah, let's start with the drop kick. So Kai Kroger is probably the most popular punter in South Carolina history. Like, this guy, I feel like the punter's not – your casual fan sometimes maybe doesn't even know anything about the punter. But
Oklahoma knows all about their punter, believe me.
Seen a lot of them?
Seen a lot of them. He might be their best offensive player. Go ahead, sorry.
So Kai is this – Kai's come in. He's been involved in fake field goals as the holder, fake punts. At one point, I think he was 8 for 8 on his career in passes. Like, he's one of these guys, if you meet him, he's like, we've all met the person who's just like good at everything. Like, he's one of the best golfers on the team, one of the best basketball players on the team, just is legitimately a great athlete. And so they used that to their advantage. And one thing Beamer's talked about, they had Pete Limbo as the special teams coordinator for the first 3 years. He's now the head coach at Buffalo. They're actually having a really good season up there. And so he brought in Joe DeCamillis, who's a longtime NFL coordinator, to run the special teams here this year. And, there's been a little bit of transition there. There have been some ups and downs. But one thing Beamer likes, we know, Beamer ball, all that, he likes having that standalone special teams coordinator. So Joe D, he doesn't coach like linebackers or tight ends or any other spot. His role is special teams. So one thing Beamer talked about is, hey, our guys have some time during practice to sit over there and like experiment with drop kick, sidewinder, onside kicks, and try to figure out some kind of creative things you can do to affect special teams. So yeah, Kai has been awesome. Joe D has brought a different approach than Pete Limbo, but there's been a lot of good there. You do, if you're Oklahoma, anytime they're lining up for a field goal or punt, you have to be aware of fakes. Like, that's just a big part of what they do. And yeah, the field goal game. So Mitch Jeter, he's been their kicker the last 2 years prior to this year. He was, guys, like almost just automatic, especially 45 yards and in. And so he transferred for his final year to Notre Dame. And so Herrera, he's been good, but it just hasn't quite been like Mitch is probably going to kick in the NFL. And so I think Herrera has been good when you're talking about like a traditional college kicker where, hey, inside like 40, 35 yard, or so, he's been good, but it's really when they've had to expand him out. 47 yards, 51 yards was the one against Alabama that he missed. So that has been, I don't want to say an issue, but I think the little green line they put on the screen when you're getting into field goal range has had to get a little bit closer for Carolina. And so I think they're a little bit more aggressive in most cases and saying, hey, let's keep the offense on the field here than they probably had to be before. But of course, at the end, in an end of game situation where you're having a chance to kick for the lead and you're in 4th and long, they sort of didn't have a choice but to kick that one against Bama in the 4th quarter.
It would seem that everybody is kind of preparing for a not only a tight ball game, a close ball game there in the 4th quarter, but a low-scoring ball game.
Yep.
It seems like there's a comfort level with South Carolina in playing some just weird, zany type games here over the course of 2024. You guys have seen just about everything.
We saw everything in the LSU game along.
Yeah.
Like that was a season's worth of stuff, for lack of a better word. And then we saw even more against Bama. And, the thing about that Bama game, I'm going, so Bama has the ball up 1. They're trying to like basically end the game. They need 1 first down to end the game. And they get the first down. And I'm like, oh, he needs to just kneel this ball. But Bama could have ended the game there. And they score and go up 8. So from a South Carolina perspective, you're going, well, thanks. Like, I would have loved to stop, but and it was almost like the momentum, because they gave them like almost a full 2 minutes. You're like, this game is here. Like, they can go win, and they go right down. Nick Harbor makes the best play of his career so far. And then you're 1 2-point conversion away from tying it. And they, credit it, as much as this offense, like you said, they have struggled, but they drove down 2-minute situation there and scored. And against LSU, they took over with a backup quarterback in the game. I think no time or 1 timeout and like a minute left, down 3, and drove down the field and got in field goal range in that game. So I think some of the offensive stuff has been a little bit of, hey, when a game is still close and it's still early, let's run the football, let's shorten, let's get the ball to Rocket, let's not put the quarterback in necessarily like bad spots. And then when they've had to be a little bit more aggressive, Sellers can throw the football, I think is what I'm trying to get to. It's just been, like I said, I think from a Carolina perspective, the one key to this football game this week will be the fact that Venables, I've watched this guy coach defense for, like a decade now, seen him at Clemson. He will just draw up some just crazy stuff. Like, you never know what direction they're coming from. Like, I remember people talking here about, and Dow Loggins, your fans maybe want to go watch his press conference from the day. He had a lot of good stuff just saying, hey, Venables is one of the best he's ever seen at just throwing different schemes at you on defense. And you just never know what direction it's going to come from. So young quarterback who has turned the ball over versus that, I think is the key. Like, I like South Carolina's quarterback situation better than Oklahoma's just from what I've seen on the outside. But these Gamecock fans, they've seen Venables' defense at work. So I think that's kind of that chess match there is maybe my biggest key for this one.
Last one, Wes. How big of a must-win is this for South Carolina? Because I know here in Norman, Oklahoma fans are viewing this as if they don't win
they're
this
ready
game,
to erupt if they don't play well on Saturday.
If they don't win this game, there's a lot of people that think they may not make a bowl game. You look at their back half of the schedule, it's very difficult. I know South Carolina's is also difficult. They got A&M coming up, Vanderbilt, which all of a sudden is a tougher game than anybody anticipated, Missouri, Wofford, and at Clemson in the year. How big of a must-win is this for South Carolina?
Yeah, and those here who listen to me know I hate the phrase must win, but I think if you're going to reach some of your goals in your South Carolina, like you need this W, because I think we sort of separated out this season like a lot of people do, and you sort of say, all right, you kind of break the schedule down. You're like, all right, if Carolina can split the Kentucky and LSU games, then they'll be in a good spot early on, and that's exactly what happened. So they were 3-1 to start the year by splitting those 2 games. Then you look to this stretch and you're like, wow, Ole Miss, Bama, Oklahoma. And they've got a bye week after that. So I think you put those 3 games together and you were going, well, can they still one out of the 3? Like, can you just not get swept in that 3-game stretch? And then, as we know, they lost the first 2. So you're going, if you're going to kind of stay on pace, if you're going to stay on track, then you really need a win this week. And then I think, frankly, you go into a bye week at that point. You're on the right side of 500. You've got A&M, who actually does have to come to you in Columbia, night game. That's been a place where, like, Carolina has turned it up at night at home. Like, they have made it really difficult on opponents. So I think the entire just vibe, the sort of tenor of the season so far, with a win as compared to, a loss and 3-4 and hearing about it for 2 weeks going into a bye. I mean, y'all know it. Y'all see it on your message boards as well. Like, shoot, I'm sitting there going, it's going to be a miserable 2 weeks just sitting in this chair if Carolina loses. And obviously it's even, to an infinitely higher level if you're in that building over there and suiting up. So, yeah, it's definitely a swing game for South Carolina. And I think it's a coin flip type game as well. Like, yeah. I know Oklahoma is slightly favored, but I'm not a gambler, but I'm not feeling really comfortable on either side of this thing as far as like picking a winner.
Yeah, both. But I think both fan bases feel about the exact same about their football teams. Don't know what to really expect offensively, and just hope the defense can get enough stops or enough turnovers to keep you in the game in the fourth quarter. It's going to be interesting. Both teams need a win. Wes Mitchell, we appreciate it, from Gamecock Central. Looking forward to the first meeting ever between Oklahoma and South Carolina, which is kind of still insane to me. But it's going to be a fun one. 11:45 SEC Network on Saturday morning. Wes, we appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thank y'all.
You bet.
Thanks, Wes.
See ya. Certainly going to be interesting. Thanks again to Wes Mitchell. Always good to catch up with him. I know he was with us on the the opponent preview that we ran here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel over the summer.
Yep.
Certainly, it's kind of interesting when you talk about South Carolina. The 3 losses aren't just the ugliest things in the entire world. And in an LSU game that they probably could have won.
Yeah.
Should have won.
They're a talented group. Brent said it earlier in the show. They've been able to recruit really well. Like, they've got good players. I think Shane's got that thing kind of headed in the right direction.
Bunch of veterans, too.
Yeah. And there, obviously the expectations at a place like South Carolina are a little bit different. You're 3-3 at Oklahoma. I mean, heck, you're 4-2 at Oklahoma, and all of a sudden it feels like you're on the hot seat as a coach. Whereas, Shane Beamer, if they can get to a bowl game this year, it'd be a great success. So, look, South Carolina's been in some really close games. They've had some things not go their way.
Sure.
Games not break their way. So this is going to be a really tough football game for Oklahoma. This is a team that, look, I think we said it on the interview with Wes. Both these teams kind of need this game to reach bowl eligibility in a lot of ways. All of a sudden, you feel a lot better,
more comfortable about it.
Exactly.
Right?
So, their back half of the schedule is not easy. Obviously, Oklahoma's is not either. So they're coming to Norman, looking that this feels like a must win. I said that with Wes, but it really does feel like a must win for both sides.
And it certainly seems like it's a situation that you're not going to get a North Carolina or a South Carolina team, that is going to walk in and just be overwhelmed by the moment. Obviously, go to Tuscaloosa a week ago, falling short, really having a pretty good chance there in the fourth quarter. And, I think a lot of the stuff that West outlined and the problems for South Carolina, whether it be the turnovers or the penalties or situational awareness that he had wrote about this week, it kind of the same thing with Oklahoma, especially at the quarterback position, where they've rode the roller coaster with Lenora Sellers, as well as Oklahoma now riding that roller coaster with a true freshman of their own in Michael Hawkins Jr.
Yeah, this is a huge week for Mike. When you look at his body of work, as Brent has said, it's not very big. But you like some of the things you've seen. He comes into the Tennessee game and was really letting it loose, was ripping the ball out, obviously scrambled around, made some big plays. The Auburn game, other than the 2 big plays, the touchdown run and the 60-yard pass to J.J. Hester, there wasn't a ton from the offense. And then this last week where there was nothing going and
Sure.
It felt like he was holding on to the ball a little too long. This feels like a make it or break it situation this weekend for Oklahoma at quarterback in terms of, if the offense goes out there and sputters for Mike, do they turn to a Jackson Arnold? Do they see if Jackson can give them some sort of spark by coming back into the game? We'll see. I think whoever's in there, and especially for Mike as a young guy that's, this is only his third career start. You got to build some confidence. We said the same thing with Jackson earlier in the year, but get him some easy throws, get him some easy completions, and then let him be aggressive. Like, I think that's somewhere in there. And Mike, obviously, you look at his high school career, and he's a very aggressive football player. We didn't see that a week ago. Let it rip this weekend. You know, I think that you can't play that style of football. I know Oklahoma wants to be conservative, avoid the turnovers, but this week, man, like, it feels like Oklahoma's season is really on the line in this game. I think you got to tell your true freshman quarterback, just let loose, play free. What do you have to lose at this point?
19 of 30 last week for just 148 yards. A lot of those numbers, or a lot of those yards, coming there in the fourth quarter on the final possession for Oklahoma. He was sacked 6 times last week by Texas. I think it ended up being 5 officially, but who gives an ass, right? He's still getting a lot of pressure in his face because of an offensive line that continues to try to find balance. But I think more than anything this week for Michael Hawkins Jr., the conversation was keeping positive momentum or trying to find momentum. But just in terms of keeping positivity around the offensive side of the football, that obviously is not going as well as planned.
Yeah, you don't want to kill a kid's confidence this early in his career. I mean, look at what's going on with Jackson Arnold. Like, it feels like that confidence may be shot a little bit. We'll see if he is able to get back on the field in some capacity for Oklahoma, but you don't want that with Michael Hawkins. I mean, he could be your quarterback of the future. So finding some success for him, protecting him. You mentioned the 6 sacks. A few of those were he's holding on the ball just a little too long. So I'm sure that was an emphasis in practice this week. Hey, if it's not there, just get rid of it. Throw it out of bounds. If you do see somebody open, let it rip, man. Like, throw it deep a few times. I do think you're going to see them. It felt like Brent talking about that this week. Sometimes you just got to throw a 50-50 ball down the field. And that
give somebody
opens
a
up
chance.
That opens up stuff, because now all of a sudden South Carolina or whoever you're playing has to respect that, has to be threatened by it in some fashion. And teams right now are just not threatened by Oklahoma's quarterback being able to push the ball down the field. So I do think we're going to see them maybe be a little bit more aggressive this week and maybe try to build some of that confidence.
It's kind of amazing that it was just that 60-yard reception to or 60-yard throw to J.J. Hester at Auburn. But I just remember thinking how, like, everybody could breathe almost. You could feel like the exhale on the sidelines after that completion, not only because it got him back into the game, but it just was almost kind of a confidence booster for everybody on that side of the ball.
Huge.
Talking to players this week about keeping a positive experience or a positive mindset around the offensive side of the football, and particularly freshman quarterback Michael Hawkins Jr.
Yeah, he's done great. Just everything we've seen. He's been leading the offense, I'm sorry. It's challenging as a young quarterback for something like that to happen. It's very difficult. It's easy for a guy just for something like that to happen with the situation to get very down on himself. But he's done a phenomenal job just leading the offense. Moving on, obviously, I'm not in those rooms, but there's something that they have to fix and correct, and he's going to be the first one to do it.
And Mike, for example, in the second half, he had a couple of really nice throws over the middle, tight coverage, bang bang kind of plays. He did that in the first half early, and there's some times when you don't trust it, and that's just part of the maturation. You don't want that. Which you go back and you freeze the picture and you show them what's there, and you develop that through practice and the confidence that comes with it, and everybody's got to be on the same page. And again, you go back and, like I said, you show them the ones that were good, and then you say, hey, these are the ones that are there, and you match them up with maybe what we did in practice. There were 8 plays that Texas was successful with their offense, same formation, same play. And there's 8 of them on defense. We practiced that exact play, that hash, that motion.